you guys aware of how many students you actually reach with your publication? Because I know we have about 1,500 students at our school, like Chad said, but we only print about 1,000 issues per month. And so we know for a fact it's not getting to every student. We're not exactly sure always how that pans out, but is anyone else aware of that? Are you guys mostly newspapers? Yeah?
We have about 4,000 kids in our school, and we print a little more than that because we put it out to the faculty as well, and then we send it off to some places. And I mean, I think people do read. I mean, I know some people don't, but we have it in the library in front, the front desk, and everybody. And I see people in the hallway talking about it and reading it.
Yeah. Yeah, it's always rewarding to see people who are reading your publication. All right, does anyone else want to add on to this before we move on? All right.
Okay, our next section will be becoming aware of your readership.
Okay, so no matter what type of publication you are, news is probably going to be a pretty central element. And of course, as high school journalists, when we're writing news, we want to write stories that are actually going to apply to our readership, that are going to inform them or mobilize them or motivate them, but in any case, that are going to be worth reading to them. And tying this in with our theme, we want to write news that will apply to all of the different demographics that are represented at our school, rather than just those that are represented on our staff. And something that we tell our staff writers, that I'm sure you guys do too, is if it's something that you're bored writing or you're bored editing, there's a pretty good chance that no one's going to be interested in reading that. So there are a couple things that you're going to want to keep in mind.
Okay, there are several things you can consider when writing stories about diversity, and Aaron and I can put up a list of the following. Who does this affect? Who are stakeholders? Why does it need coverage? And who cares? When writing these stories, be sure not to alienate your readership.
And just to clarify for our purposes, when you say alienate, we mean to make a reader feel like he or she has no stake in the story, has no reason to read it. Like it says here, to cause one to feel isolated or estranged.
Okay, and when we mean alienate, we do not mean anger. Feel free to get your readership fired up, get them mad, but while doing this, don't alienate them.
And when he says, get them mad, it means publish an editorial that's going to, cause some controversy among the school, or, write on a topic that some administrators might not be too happy with. But as long as it is actually newsworthy and it's worth covering, feel free to write it if it's going to make people angry, but in doing so, don't alienate your base.
Why do you guys say stakeholders rather than sources?
When we say stakeholders, I mean, typically we mean sources, but really we call it that because usually when you interview a key voice for your story, they actually have a stake in the issue, and it's something that they care about. So that's just kind of the root of that word.
Okay, here are a couple examples from our publication about diversity.
All right, this is a story that I wrote last year about the Athens Latino Center for Education Services. Like Chad said earlier, our school is about 20% Latino, and a lot of those students have parents that might not be fluent in English and might have a hard time keeping up with some of the literature that's going to come from the students or interacting with teachers at school. And this is a nonprofit organization in Athens that provided naturalization services, English as a second language classes, GED preparation, all for the Latino community. So this was a story that I kind of went into it without a lot of knowledge. It was difficult to get some of those first interviews. In fact, for one interview, I had to bring along a student from our staff who was bilingual to translate because the source spoke only Spanish. But as a result, this story was able to kind of give a voice to this movement and to show what good work they were doing to the rest of the community and to that group of students at our school who might not have known about them already.
So for the man who's got the school with the Burmese refugees, what are you guys doing to cover that group of your population that probably is underrepresented, doesn't really have a voice right now?
We did last year a feature, I think it was last year, a feature of every issue we would have a profile of a different. Every issue we have a profile of a different refugee and tell them a little bit about their story. And we covered some of the, I think we covered some of the classes that they take and some of the programs that they're in to help them with that. But they don't get a ton of consistent coverage this year.
down at a time and required heavy maintenance. And with maintenance comes renovation. And with renovation, many families, well, all the families were forced to move out. And some of the families, kids went to our schools and were forced to change their lives. And it was just a big, big deal. We wrote this story and had several voices of the kids who went there, particularly a student named Quintavious McReed. Quintavious McReed, his quotes and story were just so good, we decided to give him his own column, and he just did an excellent job of telling the people about that story.
How many of you guys go to a public school? Okay, wow, that's great. At GSPA, which is our other conference, a huge amount of people go to private schools, so this is good to see. So you guys are probably familiar with having students in your schools who live in public housing neighborhoods. So this is the type of story that anyone can probably relate to. Like Chad said, this just affects a huge amount of people in our school district. I think there's over 100 students who basically were unsure where they were going to live because this neighborhood was shut down. Some of them were moved to other neighborhoods, and some of them weren't really so sure what was going to happen in the future. But as a result of this article, they were able to kind of get a voice from that. Right, this is a story that I wrote a couple years ago, and this is actually like our bad example of what you probably want to avoid when you're considering your readership. This was at the time that the Occupy movement was going on, and we had this local Occupy Athens branch, which I thought was really cool. I was a freshman at the time. And so I went to some of the rallies, and I interviewed some of the people who were behind the movement. And I enjoyed writing the story, and it was actually